15 metres, brings him to the wing. The quarter is 31 minutes old, up to Kappa, but there's the siren. It's quarter time. And at the first change, it's the Swans by 16 points. Their goal kickers, Tony Moore with 2, Wright has 2, singles to Mitchell, Potter and Bays. The Carlton singles to Silvani, Kernahan, Johnston and Bradley. It's the Swans 7-3-45, Carlton 4-5-29 at quarter time at the SCG.
"7:30 Saturday, an Australian adventurer goes to the frozen end of the planet. Dick Smith attempts the first solo flight to the North Pole by helicopter. A journey of magnificent spectacle and considerable risk.
You can see there's absolutely no horizon there at all. Now this is what they call whiteout conditions, where I'm virtually on instruments. My gyro has frozen up. The magnetic compass is totally useless. Minus 37 degrees centigrade.
Adventure over ice, the perils and the grandeur. Solo to the top of the world. Saturday at 7:30, straight after the news.
So a tremendous first quarter, ending with the Swans 16-point leaders, and Kevin, I think fair to say that they deserve just about that margin.
A magnificent start, Tim, by the Sydney Swans. 6 goals in the first 16 minutes, but full marks to Carlton because they did play better towards the end of that quarter. Certainly Bradley and Williams are having a great competition in the centre. Dorotich is pretty strong at centre-half back for the Blues, but it's around the ground where Wright is playing magnificently well. Morwood on the forward line. He's already had a different opponent. He's had Elvin taken off him. Dean's now on him with 2 goals. He's been a very key player up there. Also Stevie Wright, Williams and Bolton, who's having a great duel on the wing with David Rhys-Jones. A lot of heavy clashes there, Doug, and you've called it a couple of times.
Yes, and I think winning it too, Kev. I think Bolton's done it. He's bolted away a few times with that astonishing pace that he's got. The other man I think has done a wonderful job is John Ironmonger. We've tended to look on the big fellow as largely just a big fellow who's strong, and that's why he's there. But he's got nearly every centre bounce, and he's helped Rod Carter tremendously in the back line. Time and time again, when it looks like Kernahan might take big marks over them, or Silvani, there's been the huge frame of Ironmonger giving Carter or some other South Melbourne, some other Swans support. And a lot of credit to him because he's worked very hard over the summer period.
I think it's been the running players of the Swans, because you mentioned before about all the Swans players being at the foot of the pack, and that's the way Tom Hafey coaches. He really does ask his players to punch the ball strongly to the pack, and every Swans player knows that if a Swans player is caught from behind, he will punch the ball very, very hard to the front of the pack, if not towards the boundary line. So they swarm in, they know where the ball is going. So far it's the Swans' little players who have played well. I mentioned Dorotich before. Heywood is falling down at centre-half forward. He's a bit of a problem there. And Kappa is being well held by McKenzie. And McKenzie's a new fella to full back, but tonight he's doing a good job. And even Madden is pushing himself to get down in that goal square, because Kappa is a big problem for the Carlton team.
The Blues are looking a bit top-heavy, Kev?
Well, they've got some big guys on that forward line. Dennis has taken the odd mark or two, but so far hasn't done a great deal. Satori's a little bit of a disappointment to me. Satori last year had the most marks in Australia playing at centre-half forward for Swan Districts over there in Perth. But here in Victoria has really struggled to take those marks against the bigger defenders, and he started off at the forward pocket on Carter, but Robert Walls quickly made that move and put him down towards centre-half forward, and Kernahan into the square with 1 goal and 4 behinds. Kernahan, to me, looks to be the danger.
It's a new look Carlton forward line, in fact. I think like the Swans, they used to get their goals just from weight of numbers bringing the ball down the ground, and there used to be a big spread of goals. But this year it seems that they do have quite a high-marking forward line, and their approach to goal just looks a little bit different to me. There are the quarter-time scores. The Swans 7-3-45, Carlton 4-5-29, just repeating the goal kickers in that first term. 2 to Tony Morwood, 2 to Steve Wright, singles to Mitchell, Potter and Bays for the Swans, and all single goal kickers for Carlton: Silvani, Kernahan, Johnston and Bradley. And here are how some of the goals were kicked in the first quarter. Barry Mitchell off the ground, and that was Steve Wright's first.
Well, Stevie Wright and Barry Mitchell have been very, very good players. We see Carroll there quickly kicking that ball out of defence. Carroll's coming back from a knee injury, quite hasn't recovered yet, but Dorotich very strong against Henry. And there's Rhys-Jones crashing into the Swans player there. That caused a bit of a wrestle, but we see Tony Morwood pull to the ground. a long kick into the square. Now this resulted in a goal here, and Alvin was moved off Morwood after that goal. He was far too loose. Ironmonger punching strongly from behind, and that's what the Swans players will do. Then they break up their running game with Healy and Williams and Mitchell bringing the ball down. Browning's been a very, very good player, and there's Mitchell with that long shot at goal, and that's another Tommy Hafey trait, and that is to get the players to kick very, very long. We see Bradley there, a beautiful disposal by Bradley, kicks it high, and Silvani tapped the ball and ran in for an easy goal here. And Silvani has looked quite good down on the forward line, but simply Carlton haven't been able to get the ball down there quick enough.
There are the statistics. Carlton ahead on kicks, but the Swans ahead on handballs, so the total possessions, 77 to the Swans, 74 to Carlton. Marks just about even, kicks dead level, and the Swans ahead on scoring shots, although that's not quite right. It should be 10 to the Swans, 9 to Carlton, and hit-outs just about even, so not much in it statistically.
Handballs are interesting, Tim, because throughout the season the Swans have averaged about 40 hand passes more than Carlton, so that's falling much as the traditional pattern, I guess.
Well, Tom Hafey, with that running game, Doug, there's a lot of players coming down in waves. You've always got Bolton, you've always got Williams in there, and you've got Browning coming off the half-back line, and Holden and Roberts when he's playing. So their whole style of game is set up for this running game, coming off defence. And the idea, of course, is to have the boy with the ball having plenty of time to get his disposal in down towards Kappa.
You're sounding like Tom Hafey calling them boys, Kev.
Well, I suppose I've been around him for a long time.
They're looking a very good kicking side too, Kev. Bayes is a perfect kick. Browning, of course, we know of yesteryear what a great kick. Tony Moore's very accurate. Kappa's probably the only one on that forward line who's not capable of really kicking long goals. Stephen Wright's an excellent kick.
Well, Bayes is probably the best kick in league football, and tonight he's been fairly well covered in that first quarter by Motley. It was that magnificent 50-metre goal that really set Bayes up with that good goal in the first quarter.
He did a couple of nice smothers early, Bayes.
He did make some good smothers, and but Carlton, I thought Wayne Johnson also looked to be a bit damaging. I think if Carlton can get their running players around the ground, Glasgott's playing on Healy, he's doing a tagging role, but he's not really generating anything. Gleeson is roving, but Gleeson is not really at the foot of the pack. He's not really generating any forward moves, and it's really coming, say, from Bradley in the centre, Johnston playing on the half-forward flank, and getting the ball down there, but it's not really coming down quickly enough.
Maybe Ironmonger's giving them a big lift, getting the ball out, helping them to get the ball out of the centre quickly, the Swans.
It's the best I've seen Ironmonger ruck for a while. John Ironmonger often doesn't get his hands to the ball enough for a guy of his size, but playing against Madden, who's not physically strong compared to Ironmonger, who's a giant of a man, it may suit Ironmonger tonight, but sometimes he tires as the match goes on.
Okay, second term about to get underway. The Swans 16-point leaders as we rejoin the action. And it's umpire Howe to bounce the ball and start the second quarter at the Sydney Cricket Ground. The Swans 7-3-45, Carlton 4-5-29.